Welcome to our Monday session. It's Adele Anderson from lifecoachadele.com. And today I'm talking a little bit about NLP, which is Neuro Linguistics programming. So what exactly is that? Well, it defines how humans like to identify their surroundings. We know we have language, but in the early days we didn't. So we had to define what a rock was or, what our name was. So we defined our experience based on our sensory information coming in. So we would, describe a rock. Maybe it's round, maybe it's hard. It bangs when we knock two of them together, and we can throw it, and whatever the weight of it, whatever else it was, the temperature. But everybody might describe that rock differently. They have a different experience with the rock. But language is one of the ways that we can self-identify within our lives based on our past experience that we've had to date. So when we use NLP, we know that the mind works in a certain way, that we can observe and model a behavior in someone, and then we self-identify with it. But we self-identify in a very specific way, based on our past experience, our belief systems, and what we believe to be true. So for example, if we believe certain role models, like girls play with dolls, girls have doll houses, girls don't play with baseball, only boys play baseball. So depending on how we were raised, we might have very specific ideas about the toys that children play with. And this becomes a filtration system deep within our mind. So why NLP can change that is sometimes this becomes a distorted reality. Do little boys not play with dolls, or do little girls not play with a little baseball mitt? And so when we have these distortions within our mind, we can say that possibly our reality changes if we recognize that. So when we learn NLP, what we do is we give back some flexibility within our mind, which creates flexibility within our behavior, especially when a difficult situation arises where we become emotionally involved. This is when, as soon as we move into emotion, that we're not in our big thinker. So we run a pattern of behavior based on our past experiences. And that can lead us down a garden path that isn't very pretty. But without having that in mind, we don't have the ability to think that maybe life could be different. And where I discovered that life could be very different was when I crashed in a plane that flipped in water. And my reality was that my brain always operated in a certain reality. But when I was in that situation and asked my mind for specific information, the results were quite incredible, allowing me to escape a plane that had crashed and overturned in water by giving me information that had been locked deep within my mind that I didn't even know existed. So I could have, met my demise. But from that experience, what I realized that my belief was wrong, or was at least too narrow to maybe experience the world in a different way. So I thought, well, what else don't I see? And so another experience was working in Whistler and going into a cloakroom that had 100 employees, and I was trying to shove my coat into the coat rack, and it was so full. And then this very tall person came in and just hung their coat up top. And I looked up and I was like, I didn't even know that that existed. So then my reality started questioning, what else am I not seeing? And this is where our model of the world can be altered. And we also know now through neuroscience and neurolinguistics programming that we can alter it ourselves. So we can actually take the behavior of somebody who's become an expert at something and install it in someone else. So why would we want to do that? Well, maybe you want to learn golf, or maybe your child is having trouble learning math, or maybe you'd just like to feel more confident when you're public speaking. You can install different behaviors by creating the excellent person state in yourself, and then you actually live it, breathe it, become it. Because our mind doesn't recognize the difference between reality and fantasy. If we give it a model, it will use it. So that's the cool thing about neuroscience. So one of the stories I was going to tell you about is one of the first NLP modeling sessions that was done with the U.S. government. And Anthony Robbins, who you probably have all heard of, and then Richard Bandler, who is one of the founding fathers of NLP. So the U.S. government approached them. They wanted to increase the number of sharpshooters in their army. But it was taking them 4 weeks, and they were only getting a 20% pass rate. And they wondered if they could use neuroscience to model the expert of the people that were really good at it. So they brought these experts in. And they found out the modeling of the experts. So they found out how they stood or how they laid and how they kept their focus and what they listened to and how their heart rate changed and how their breathing changed. They took all that information in, and then they created a recipe, which they then installed into the next group of candidates. And do you know what happened? Within 7 days, they had an 80% pass rate. So it went from 4 weeks and a 20% pass rate to 7 days and a 80% pass rate. Hi, Louisa. Welcome. So we found that through this modeling of information that we could actually install the excellence of someone else into ourselves. And that was revolutionary for NLP. So when we look at how we become limited, is we have an experience. Our reality is a certain thing. And that reality composes about 2 million bytes of information a second. All of that information, if you can just imagine, 2 million bytes of information coming at you every second in your reality. But our mind only has the capacity to take into about 134,000 bytes of information. So what happens to that other huge mass, mega million bytes of information? Well, it gets lost in generalizations that little girls don't play baseball or boys don't play with dolls. We don't need that information because that's not what we believe. So we delete it. We distort it. So what would be a distortion? For example, I have a few realtor friends, and I've heard it a few times. They say, people hate realtors. And I'm like, I don't hate you. So that should tell you right now that that's a pretty big generalization. So the beliefs that we have that everybody hates realtors becomes a belief system in our mind, and then our action is based on that belief. But those are the generalizations, the deletions and distortions that get rid of that other billion and, I don't know, almost 2 billion bytes of information. So we create this collage within our brain with that 134,000 bytes. And you can see it's missing a lot of information. So how does that work for us? Well, it works with the mind maps that we've already had from our previous existence. So what we learned when we were 2, what we learned when we were 4, what we learned, yesterday, that information gets collated down into the things we already know so that we form our reality of the world, which we know is simply perception. Perception is fluid, it's meant to be changed. It's actually not truth. It's just an assumption of what is. So how else we delete it is based on our personality and our interests. So, I don't watch hockey. I don't need to know the stats for hockey. I don't run, so I don't need to know about shin splints. So we delete all kinds of information based on our likes and our personality. So for example, if you went to the library, let's say we're all walking down to the library, the public library, group of friends, and we get through the door, we sign in, and then everyone goes a different direction. Because our interests are different. So I'll see you in half an hour. I'm going to be on aisle 3, and someone else is in aisle 10, and someone else is down in the basement. So this is our view of the world. We keep taking in information based on what we like and based on our personality. So how that can mess us up is we actually don't see the other stuff. So, for example, before I had grandchildren, do you think I walked into the baby aisle and gooed and got at all those cute little dresses? I never even knew they existed. I didn't know all the stuff that was available, all the cool little things to help them eat, and the chair that they sit in, and the cute little nappies that you can put on. Didn't know about it because I didn't need to know. It was like it didn't even exist. So the same thing happens like when you buy a new car and then you go out for a drive and you think, where did all these people come from that have my car? So before, you might not have actually recognized the car. Another way of thinking about it is turning an old style radio. The radio frequency is turned into a certain frequency, and that's what you hear. But then you go to change the dial and it goes and you no longer hear that, and all of a sudden the music starts to come in on a different channel. So all of that other stuff is now out of your radar. Just the channel that you're on is filtering towards you. So that's a good way to understand what's coming in is just that one channel. All that other stuff doesn't exist. So we base our behavior on that. So we have to understand that's why siblings see their life in a different way. They had a completely different experience growing up. You were like, did I live in the same house with you? So you understand why, because it's the filtration, it's the view, it's the static, it's the tuning into that radar. The thing about it is however we tune in, then is the behavior that we create and the action that we take. So I had a conversation this morning about challenge. Someone said, it's really challenging. And I was like, well, it will be if you think it's going to be. So let's find some solutions around the challenge. We need to change the thought of it being challenge and install some resources that will keep you looking for solutions, keeping your mind asking the question to fill in those gaps. Change the channel. Change the channel from challenging over to I'm a rock star. And tune into that, right? Forget about the other. It's not helping you. And if you are having trouble changing the channel, that's where NLP can do it for you. We can install the excellence by modeling the behavior of someone who's already got it dialed in. So just a little key to say, you know, how we make things possible by changing the state. So let me give another analogy. If someone is feeling challenged, think about what their body language is saying. Think about how their chest is expanding, how much air they're bringing into their lungs, maybe even their body temperature. Think about the thoughts that go through someone's mind or would go through your mind if you felt challenged. And then reach over to the radio frequency and dial in success. So you can hear the static, and it's starting to find its way, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're in success. How much brighter is it? Do you feel expanded? What does your chest feel like now? What breath are you bringing into your lungs? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? How are you recognizing this new frequency? Just step into that. Step into that success frequency and see what it feels like. And you can step into it anytime. Dial out the challenge. Dial out limitations. Just imagine yourself, it's as simple as turning the dial, and then you no longer see it, no longer hear it, no longer feel it. And you dial yourself into the success that you want for yourself. You can do it, and I can take you there. If you'd like some more information about NLP or would like to have a session with me, just check into my website, lifecoachadele.com. I would love to have this conversation in person. But until then, keep yourself dialed into success. I'll just step aside. If you have any questions, just type them in, and I'm happy to answer. Bye-bye.